on the ones who really were interested and what my chances might be, if I'd been taking this seriously. Of the 25 who responded, 17 winked and 8 sent messages. The winkers are a promiscuous group who don't seem to pay a whole lot of attention to where you live or what you might be looking for. But then I guess the very nature of winking is benign promiscuity, especially if winking doesn't even require moving your eyelid, only clicking on the second send button. My winkers were mostly around 48 years old, and out of 17 winks, 11 were from out of state, some as far away as California and Texas. I'm not sure what these guys get out of it, but maybe it leads to phone sex, who knows? But why is some 41-year-old from San Diego winking at me? Where can that relationship lead? Maybe they're charity winks. They figure a 51-year-old who calls herself paltry will be grateful for anything she can get. The winks actually mean nothing. It's the messages that count. Those are the guys who want some contact. All the ones who actually wrote to me were in their late 50s to mid-60s, and despite the fact I had specified I lived in Manhattan, only one Manhattanite responded. It was mostly guys from New Jersey and Long Island, plus a nice widower from Tennessee. The message here seemed to be that for the most part, New York City men do not want to date paltry seniors. Though I think I knew that going in. But the fact they were on the age range I was looking for, and most for 50-year-old men who wanted 50-year-old women, was very encouraging. Some of the messages come your way because the guys you and you connect with your mutual points of interest, the way that see how you measure up to each other, which actually makes sense, except the only things I had in common with any of them was my exercise regime. The fact I like to eat out and that I don't smoke, I'm sorry, these are not interests. They are survival techniques. It's like saying we're meant for each other because we both like to wear coats in the winter. You have to eat to live. Smoking kills you, and exercise helps keep you strong and healthy. If any of you had any qualms about jumping onto that daily exercise habit, this should give you incentive. It was the only thing all my prospective mates responded to, even the 40-year-old winkers. Which leads to another problem I found. Many of the guys look like they'd just gotten off work furlough programs, at least the ones who came through in the beginning. My guess these are the ones who are glued to the computer 24/7. Wink, wink. I must say the men who are interested in women of my age were rather particular. Many had these peculiar age cutoff points, like 52. Now, what's that about? Say you're going to turn 53 in a month. Does that take you out of the running? I cut a very wide swath for my guys. I said I would take anyone from 45 to 65. That's the thing about us girls. We are willing to go way up in the age department. And I suppose if I really were to take this seriously, I would go up to 70. But at 50, I don't want a 70-year-old unless he's Robert Redford. Another issue I discovered in online dating world is that there's too much information off the bat. One 62-year-old from New Jersey really liked Aerosmith. Now, in the absolute, there's nothing wrong with liking Aerosmith. But the idea of this bald former pilot doing air guitar to Aerosmith was such a turnoff, I immediately clicked not interested. Now, of course, we know I'm not interested anyway. But let's say I was, and we got to know each other, and took walks on the beach, and shared coffee and conversation. They all seem to be in coffee and conversation. That's the Starbuckization of our culture. The cheapest date. Better to spend $3.50 in 40 minutes than $50 in 2 hours. I only wish I'd been at Starbucks when I was dating. But anyway, imagine we get to that point where we had more in common than eating, protecting our lungs, and push-ups. And then, after I was thoroughly smitten, I found out he liked Aerosmith. That I could put up with. I'd be so wowed by his other traits, like hang gliding and whipping up gourmet treats for two, and that by that fateful night he happened to start jamming to Living on the Edge, there'd be enough feelings and shared moments between us, I'd be able to get beyond it. But if I know it going in, I ain't going in. It's like the guy from Weehawken who likes Andrew Lloyd Webber. I have such an aversion to Andrew Lloyd Webber, I cannot begin to describe it. I could never date anyone who liked Andrew Lloyd Webber, no matter how charming and considerate he might be, or how vibrant the sunsets we watched while sipping really chilled wine. Even if the sex was mind-blowing, even if he bought me a house in India, every time I looked at him I would hear, "Nothing can harm you. My words will warm and calm you. I'm here. Let me be your freedom." And I'd end up running all the way back from Weehawken to Manhattan. But if we met, and I was captivated by that magic element that is often the glue of really powerful relationships, I could learn to wear those sound-blocking earphones or make him use them while he was listening to Cats. But having access to someone's minutia can often turn you off before the real person has a chance to turn you on. Perhaps part of the problem is being a senior. You just don't have the patience for all the shit you found tolerable, even if it's something as banal as the score from Phantom of the Opera. I did send out one wink despite myself. Despite all the jokes, there were a few guys that were I on the market, I could see myself going out with. There was one in particular who made me think, yeah, if I were single, this would be someone I could date. First off, he looked a lot like my husband. So he also lived on Long Island, which wasn't my first choice, but it's more doable than, say, Dallas. He seemed interesting, and there was an irony in his self-description. Real irony, not something he picked up from a magazine. He's the one who made the remark about the shared cocktail dress. I liked that. It seemed to say he got it. And there was a picture of him in jeans drinking red wine, which is what I look like every night around 6:30. He also read many of the same books my husband reads. If I were doing this for real, those would have all been signposts that told me I had more in common with this man than a mutual love of gnocchi al pesto. But there were also a lot of pictures of him skiing. Skiing was clearly a big part of this guy's life, that and boating. So he was way more sportif than I am. My bookshelf is more sportif than I am. He did not respond for 2 days. I figured this is because of my lack of snow bunny shots. I realize now that there's a cat and mouse aspect, just like in real-life dating. You don't respond to a phone call immediately, so you don't look too needy. And the same goes for cyberwinks. But he did get back to me. He thanked me for the wink, and he called me a little tease. I didn't want to touch that one, but I figured that since I'd started this, I might as well see how far I could take it without making a total fool of myself or hurting anyone's feelings. So I sent him back a snarky response. He nailed me on that. Then he said we could talk on the phone. Guess he didn't need a skier. Guess he likes snarky. Maybe this is the way the whole thing works. It was getting sort of fun. I asked my husband if I could phone him. He said, for the book, sure. His first wife moved away for a year to write a book, so what was one phone call to Long Island? I didn't want to have him have my phone number, so I called him. But as my 9-year-old pointed out, he must have caller ID so he could Google me and find out who I was and that I wasn't for real. But it was too late. By then I'd called him. We chatted for a few minutes, and all I did was lie. I hated myself. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and he was baking pies. Or so he said. He seemed to be honest. He sounded very nice. If I weren't happily married, I might really have liked this guy. I imagined him making pies alone in his kitchen in Long Island. Maybe he was only looking to get laid, but I don't think so. He wasn't getting the real me, so it was hard to tell. He seemed to want to talk again. I told him I was going away. He said we could talk when I got back. We didn't. I was so elusive that any connection would have required me to make the next move. And frankly, I was so non-committal, like boring on the phone, that if I were him, I wouldn't have wanted to see me anyway. The next day, a New York lawyer who listed Harvard and Yale on his resume sent a long, sweet, funny email. He lived in New York City. He wanted someone my age. I figured that if he wasn't a serial killer, some girl would probably find him to be a very good catch. And then, a really cute guy not only winked, but sent me a message. His username was F. Stop Fitzgerald. He was a photographer. He had a sense of humor. His photos were cute. And he was 53. If I'd been looking for real, I'd have been at Starbucks in a heartbeat meeting him for coffee, if he'd suggested such a thing. I actually came clean with him. He seemed too cute to lie to. And he was what I said I wanted. Someone artsy, someone funny, someone living in New York. He was only 2 years older than I was. He looked younger than his age, and he seemed to be in a higher income bracket than I am. In the totally today way, he and I ended up as immediate Facebook friends with a friend in common. The upshot is, there are guys out there, ladies. There really are. The one thing about internet dating is it takes time. It's hanging in there until the right one comes along. Friends who have found mates tell me we exchanged emails for 6 months before we met in person. Like in life, well, I guess it is life, if you're looking for quality, you need patience. F-Stop said, it's easy to find dates, but not mates. People are leery. If you're this age and online looking for love, no doubt rejection has visited you many times, in one form or another. You get to the point where you're so sick of the games. If the men on the other end have had bad marriages, which most have, then they're usually emotionally exhausted and burned out. If they have come through ugly divorces, they're terrified of going through this again. Some have lost their mates to death. See, these are the ones who seem the most willing to put themselves out there a little more. They say no matter what age you are, if you had a good relationship, you're more ready and willing and able to jump back in. While there's sadness, there's less fear. And for some guys, it's just a big frat party. I actually knew a guy who ended up marrying someone he met online, but he played around online a long time before he met her and settled down. He told me that if you're a guy with a few bucks cruising the dating sites, it's like a candy store. You can meet and nail 3 girls a day. Coffee at Starbucks, and then bingo. They don't even know your phone number or where to find you to yell at you if you don't contact them afterwards. Several guys actually use the term candy store to describe it. Everyone I spoke to said it was the easiest way to get laid. A friend of mine is 48, attractive, and single. She has 2 kids and has done both old-fashioned fix-ups and internet dating. She was very articulate about it and feels that at this age, and despite the sex.com aspect I've just described, people want some peace. They just want to know that whoever they're hooking up with is going to be there for them in whatever lies ahead. She feels there's a very romanticized notion of relationship that many people write about on the web is not just projection, but reality. They really do just want to walk on the beach and snuggle in front of the TV. They want to wake up and share the paper and a good cup of joe. At 50, despite the shots of them on the ski slopes and the all-terrain vehicles, the guys looking for women their age are looking for security, a safe place to come home to, she says. I tend to agree with her. It's not always easy to find just the right person. And then, of course, not all guys not all the guys like this. There are 70-year-olds who demand someone no older than 35, and the 55-year-olds who just want to get some easy pussy. Like the rest of life, it's complex and virtually impossible to categorize easily. Great relationships involve a certain magic that is hard to find. Good ones, sometimes the result of patience and a dose of settling perhaps for a little less than you were hoping for. But that happens in the real world as well as in cyberspace. And I think the prospect of settling for a good, if not great, relationship is often more acceptable the older you get. While the majority of the men I came across were not for me, they seemed like a decent lot of fellows. And despite the fact that I have an aversion to putting a TV in the living room, many women don't. What I took away from visiting the land of cyber love is that there are many more real people out there than I could have imagined. And just as you can't find a mate in 4 days when you're 30 or 25, you certainly can't do it at 50. There are opportunities out there to be had. Had I been looking for real, F-stop and the guy from Long Island might have been possibilities. But it is true in other parts of our lives as well. At 50, we cannot have the same expectations we once had. There will certainly be compromises. The guy for you might not be in the next town. He might be in Michigan. And those guys in Michigan may know something New Yorkers don't. The world does not begin and end here. For love, many people will travel very far. And at this stage in life, that trip may be well worth it. I got off the internet scene quickly as my very presence was leading people on. And not that I was breaking any hearts, but at this stage of life, every rejection, even an imagined one, causes a tiny ping. Just as I first felt rejected by Mr. Ski Slope and Mr. Cancun, I'm sure the guys who emailed me but didn't get a response felt that for whatever reason they weren't good enough for me. At this juncture, we need to surround ourselves with life-affirming friends and lovers, the people who want the me I do so well. The thing I find most poignant is just how many truly lonely people there are. And like many things, dating at this age is harder for women. We all know men are allowed to age in ways that we're not. And when you're brave and put yourself out there, it can be difficult and sometimes humbling. But no matter what their age, almost all people want to love and want to be loved. Even if they have a thing for Aerosmith or a TV in their living room or they're not great spellers. People want to find love so badly, they actually believe that a shared appreciation for classic rock, rock shrimp, and rock climbing somehow makes them soulmates. And as I learned from my brief foray into the world of cyber meet and greet, blessedly, it sometimes does. So I still don't know where this went. That's not happening.